Welcome back to the last video in this segment under the advanced menu of DSSVue. The advanced menu has these options shown here, some cataloging to a file, some output options, some debug options that are pretty rare but we'll look in there, and the program options, where do the defaults get saved. And for example, we'd seen earlier where the groups text is. We're going to go deeper into that section where the groups are saved. So the first one we'll look at here is the catalog files. And this is more of a legacy thing where some of the old DSS programs would use a DSS text file of the catalog. In fact, DSS version 6 used this catalog here below where you see that sample DSC. That's a version 6 catalog. It was separate from the DSS file, whereas now in version 7, which is what we're supporting going forward, the catalog is part of the DSS file. But this is still can be a valuable feature to be able to get your catalog out into a text file format and to work with it. And again, let's do a demo of basically what you're seeing there on the screen. These advanced menu catalog to file. I'm going to do this first option, sorted full. That just gives the whole file sorted. I think I usually want to sort it unless you're worried about memory or something. I would always sort it. Now the catalog with wildcards is not going to do much for us unless we also go somewhere else and do a separate setting. So you see how that it just came up, there was no wildcard. So we have to actually come over to View and turn that checkbox on. I'll go back here to see that it checked catalog using wildcards is turned on over here in the display. I mean in the view. So now if I do advanced, sorted using wildcards, now we can narrow things down. Let's actually try put Sacramento here. So now we got a catalog, a text catalog here of just Sacramento. And so those wildcards can be helpful to get a catalog in the in the old format. And of course in the previous lectures, we can do the same thing, of course, with filtering this way as opposed to the wildcards. But that is an option there. I'll remember to turn that off. Let's go to our next slide. These slides are going to reiterate what I just did in the demo. This demo did C part, so it got all the precip incrementals and nothing else. We briefly looked at these in the previous lecture, but let's go into them deeper now. These are the output log files, you'll call it. And they're actually held in memory inside DSS. And there's two parts. One is the console that basically has the DSSVue application itself, which is written in Java. The message is coming from it, which could include some DSS information, but the detailed DSS information is going to be under the DSS output. So I'll pull up our DSSVue. This has been running, so there should be some stuff in the log. Let's go to output, console. This one is at the beginning. We can see some basic information, the startup. Usually I want to scroll to the bottom to see if there's an error from what I just did recently. In fact, we see something from a previous video where we were doing a database integrity check. There was actually an error here. Here's actually what a Java error would look like. Something like that. So this is very Java-centric. Let's go to the other output, the DSS output. This one is strictly the library, or you might think of the database or the engine that we talked about in the very first lecture. the library under the hood has this information of what is going on under the hood. For example, Z-write means that software is doing a write. We're writing some data, such as when we copied a record, we would have to write it as part of that copy. So lots of information, and in fact this is even minimal output compared to what you could get if you turn up the debug level. You can get even more output. Let's move forward in our lecture. Again, here's reiterating what we did in the demo. The DSS output. A little tidbit. You see how this output has a timestamp here on the left. That's a unique feature of DSS 7. If you don't see that timestamp, you may be using a DSS 6 file. And so if you don't have a timestamp in the left in the DSS output, please upgrade to DSS 7 because we're really moving away from DSS version 6. Now that console log that we just talked about, we can also find it in the app data that we've explored a couple times. We'll go there again in a minute. Here's our debug menu. Debug has some very detailed debugging tools to actually dig into a DSS file or to change that debug level. This first one there, you see where they're picking message level. You can go there and increase the output level. This is normally not something you do, but let's do it. Let's go to our message level, and we can just crank up the output. If we did this higher level one to diagnostic level 2, that's going to dramatically create much more output in the DSS log. And then some of these other options are really these first ones here, digging into the DSS file. Let's just dig into, let's do one of those. So I'm going to do a debug option for this selected record. So I've got one here, temperature max. Debug. I'm going to pick record addresses. So I'm going to start digging deep to this record. So that's the record that was selected, Sacramento temperature maximum. This is showing internally, details such as record type 100. It's a regular time series is what RTS means. This is similar, some of this information is similar to what we saw in the supplemental info, but most of it is the internals of DSS, the hash table address, the bin address, the info address, and the actual data. So DSS, segregates a record into different components so that you can access specific data in blocks and quickly access things by a hash of your path. I'm going to actually, just to do one demo, I'm going to click data address, and what that did when I clicked that, it copied that 118.226 over to here. And then if I click go to, it actually pulls up this little debug screen, which actually shows the raw DSS file, and it displays it in different formats, the address into the file, what's at that address. You could represent it as a 8-byte integer, a 4-byte integer, which you could actually do 2 4-byte integers the same space as an 8. You could see it as a double or a real, and it turns out that real, those numbers actually make sense. And so you can actually pack in 2 real numbers at that one address. These are actually those air temperatures that we've seen before. And here's this column here would be the character representation of that data. So this is the raw DSS file that you can scroll through, and it's a rare thing to do, but I'll just show it there for reference. These other ones, memory monitor is this here, just a simple Java memory monitor. Show you how much memory is going on. Perhaps if there was in a rare case where something's funny, look at your memory, and if you saw your memory was running out, that would be a good diagnostic step. There's some options here to set some of the internal variables, the global flags for DSS. Z sets a way to set variables such as what's the message levels. Is an older way of doing that. As the inquirer to look up one of the global variables that are in memory within DSS. Now let's move on to program options. This is our almost in the final stretch here of this video and this segment. So the program options get deeper into that section when I talked about the app data. App data is important for under the general. There's a little button here to reset the program defaults. That's equivalent to going to app data and just deleting your DSS directory and starting fresh. DSS has defaults in the program, but if you make any changes to the defaults, they will get saved in that app data area. This bottom section here is the tab for chef format, chef importing and exporting. In this version of DSS that we're using here, a newer version as of January 2025, the chef processing is now done with Python. It's no longer built into the DSS library, and these configurations can be tuned for your specific case, and these locations can be edited. This is the default location. If you do a fresh install, DSS will automatically create these files. These files can be used, for example, with a chef to translate a chef code to what you'd want it to look like in your DSS path parts. And that's the end. So we'll see you in the next segments, and take care.